Okay, so every single day we see this one number that judges the air we're about to breathe, the AQI, right? Sometimes it's a nice, friendly green, other times it's a pretty alarming red. But have you ever stopped and wondered what is actually behind that score? Well, today, we're gonna crack that code together.
I mean, think about it. It's on your phone, it's on the news, it's everywhere. This one number tells you whether it's a good day to go for a run or maybe a better day to keep the windows shut tight. So, what is it really trying to tell us? Let's get into it and uncover the story behind the score.
All right, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the basics of the AQI number itself, then we'll meet the invisible culprits it's actually measuring. After that, we'll see how that single score gets calculated, dig into why winter is just the worst for air quality, and finally, we'll tie it all back to what really matters, our health. So, let's dive in.
First things first, let's tackle the number itself. You know, the whole point of the AQI is to take a ton of really complex science and just boil it all down to one single number that we can all understand at a glance.
So the Air Quality Index, or AQI, is the system that the Central Pollution Control Board uses here in India. The easiest way to think about it is like a scale from 0 to 500. 0 is perfectly clean air, and 500, well, that's as bad as it gets. It's basically a daily report card for the air around us.
And here's how to read that report card. Good is, well, it's good. Satisfactory is fine. But look what happens when you cross 100 into moderate. That's when people with sensitivities, like asthma, start to feel it. And once you're past 300, into that very poor range, the air becomes a genuine health risk for pretty much everyone.
Okay, so if the AQI is the final grade, what are the ingredients? What's actually in the air that's being measured to come up with that score? Let's meet the main players.
So, monitoring stations are constantly tracking 8 major pollutants. You've got gases like carbon monoxide, even heavy metals like lead. But for our day-to-day city life, there are 2 that really steal the show. The ones you hear about all the time, PM10 and PM2.5. And PM just stands for particulate matter.
So PM10 particles are what we'd call coarse. Think of things like road dust, grit from a construction site, or even pollen. They're big enough to irritate your nose and throat. But PM2.5, that's a whole different beast. These particles are way, way smaller, and they come from much nastier sources, like car exhaust and industrial smoke. And because they're so tiny, they cause much bigger problems.
So just how small are we talking here? Well, a single particle of PM2.5 is about 30 times smaller than the width of one of your hairs. It is quite literally an invisible enemy. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. You see, because these things are so microscopic, they can sneak right past your body's natural defenses. They don't get stuck in your nose or throat like dust does. Nope. They travel deep into your lungs and can even get into your bloodstream, which lets them reach your heart and other vital organs. Its size is its superpower.
All right, so we've got all these different pollutants floating around. How on earth do they combine all that information into the one single AQI number we see on our phones? You know what? The process is actually way simpler than you'd think.
It's really just a 3-step process. First, the stations measure the raw amount of each of the 8 pollutants in the air. Second, they take each of those measurements and convert them into a mini AQI score of their own. That's called a subindex. So PM2.5 gets a score, ozone gets a score, you get the idea. And finally, they just look at all those scores and pick the highest one. That single number becomes the official AQI for the day.
Now, this is so important, I'm going to say it again. The final AQI number you see is not an average. It's a spotlight on the single worst performing pollutant at that moment. So if your phone says the AQI is 350, it means that at least one of those pollutants has had a dangerous level of 350, and that's the biggest, most immediate threat to your health right now. And now for the question that I know everyone in North India especially asks. Why does the air quality completely fall off a cliff every single winter? How do we get those insane AQI numbers that are literally off the charts? Well, it turns out it's a perfect storm of 3 different factors.
The first one is weather thing, called a temperature inversion. So normally, warm air rises from the ground, and it takes pollution up and away with it. But in winter, you get this heavy, cold layer of air that gets stuck right at the surface, with warmer air floating above it. This acts like a giant, invisible lid on the city, trapping all that smog and pollution down here with us.
Okay, now, to make that lid problem even worse, you've got factor number 2, crop burning.
Around that same time of year, massive agricultural fires in the states surrounding big cities release just enormous clouds of smoke and, you guessed it, particulate matter. And the wind carries all of that junk right over into the cities.
And the final piece of this very messy puzzle is low wind speed. Winter air is often really, really still. So without any strong winds to blow the pollution away, all that city smog and smoke from the crop fires just hangs there. It accumulates day after day after day. So you've got the lid, the extra smoke, and no wind. That is the great winter trap.
So, we've decoded the number, we've looked at the science, but now let's bring it all back home to the most important question of all. What does this actually mean for you, for me, for our health? The health impacts really fall into two buckets, short-term and long-term. In the short term, a bad AQI day can give you that scratchy throat, a cough, stinging eyes, or make it feel harder to breathe. But the long-term stuff, that's where it gets really serious. Constant exposure to polluted air is linked to chronic diseases like asthma, irreversible lung damage, heart disease, and it can even lower your life expectancy.
And this is exactly why understanding the AQI is so empowering. It's not just some scary number, it's a tool. It gives you the power to decide if it's safe to exercise outside or if you should probably wear a mask today, and hopefully it gets all of us thinking about what we can do to reduce pollution in the first place. It's a daily health report for the air we all share.
Which brings us to this final, really critical idea. Pollution is not just a local problem. The air doesn't care about city lines or state borders. It's one huge interconnected system. What's happening hundreds of kilometers away can absolutely impact the air that you are breathing right this second. So, the next time you glance at that AQI number on your phone, I want you to think bigger than just your city, or even just your own health. Think of it as one data point in a much, much larger story. If the air we breathe really is one giant system that connects us all, what is today's number trying to tell us about the health of this planet we all have to share?
We are about to reach 100 subscribers. Please like, share, and subscribe to complete the target.